Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning. It's a live edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. It's Thursday. That means we'll have our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter, Brent Beaird. We're going to have Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun discuss the basketball game last night. If you missed it, Gators get blown out in Oxford. High scoring affair. No defense from either team, but it's hard to win on the road in college basketball. Ask Kansas. Kansas loses at UCF. Tons of Tennessee loses at Mississippi State, is ranked 5th in America. So we'll talk with Kevin Brockway about college basketball. If you missed it, obviously, I'm sure you've heard by now, Nick Saban stepping down as the coach at Alabama, and Bill Belichick no longer your coach at the New England Patriots. Let's go to the Titan Memorial Hotline, courtesy of Duffield Home Improvements, and we're joined by our college football analyst, Brent Beaird. It probably didn't sleep at all last night. Good morning, Brent. How are you?
Well, it's been a busy last few hours, that is for sure. It's really unprecedented that Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, and Bill Belichick have left their jobs in a span of less than 24 hours. That, by the way, that is 872 wins. Just frankly remarkable. And now, when we start the 2024 season for college football, the head coaches with the national titles are Dabo Swinney, Kirby Smart, and Mac Brown. That's your coaches for that. So yes, it's been an eventful last 12, 24 hours.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Landon says here on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing, do you think Nick Saban got tired of having to deal with entitled high school kids thinking they deserve millions before they even step on the field? I firmly believe, and I think the NIL and the portal had something to do with this, Brent. I don't think he'll probably ever say it publicly, but I firmly believe that's the case.
I think it had some to do with it. Now, the thing with him is he dealt with that about as well as anybody could.
Mm-hmm.
So I think more. I don't think there was a real health issue here. I mean, there's some rumors about Saban having cancer and his wife being early onset dementia. I've really just heard nothing about that substantial. I don't think that was it. He really came to the point, and he's said this over and over again, that when his health and his age got to be where it was a problem for him, that he would probably go ahead and retire. See, what was stunning about this in a lot of ways, well, there was a whole bunch of stuff that was stunning about it, but he actually was on the coach's teleconference yesterday morning, and he was actually interviewing candidates over the phone for staff positions. So he basically was going through a normal day, and then all of a sudden he decides that he's going to step down. Some of this had to do with, I think he was beginning to have trouble in filling out the staff, and that told him that it might be time to go. See, look, when you've accomplished what he's accomplished, it's a difficult call when to step aside. Now, there have been guys who have waited probably a few years too long, but you began to see this with Bobby Bowden toward the last few years of his career at FSU. They were having trouble developing players. The recruiting was okay. It wasn't what it used to be. Now Saban's recruiting, and I've always said this, that you would know when it was time to that he was going was if the recruiting was falling off. Well, the recruiting was not falling off; it was number 2, next to Georgia's number 1. So, but I think he got to that point. Kind of several things came together at one time and decided to do it yesterday after signing day or early signing day, after the portal had closed. Now, the portal is back open in Alabama for 30 days. This is what happens when coaches will resign or they will leave. So people need to keep that in mind too. So there are a lot of things that went into this decision yesterday.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about who's some potential replacements. Andy says here, Las Vegas odds have Billy Napier is I think 14-1 or something like that. Look, 8th best chance to land the Bama job. It's the best job in America. We all know that. But boy, to replace the legend like that, they say you don't want to be the guy to replace the legend. You want to be the guy after that, after the guy that gets fired after replacing the legend. So, I mean, the only people that I can think of, Brent, would be obviously Dan Lanning, Lane, Sark, or I know I'm missing one. I had 4 guys that all have Alabama ties.
Yeah, the other hot guy is
Dabo.
That and DeBoer at Washington.
Yeah, Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah. Now.
Yeah, I think I like Dan Lanning. You know, he's a young guy. He was a GA at Alabama back in the day.
Right.
Alabama's going to have to pay a $20 million buyout to Oregon, which no big deal for them. No. But if you're Dan Lanning, do you say, hey, it's going to be easier for me to get into the playoffs year in and year out playing in this Big Ten where there's only about 3 good teams?
Sure.
Or do I go into follow the greatest of all time and have to deal with the SEC week in and week out?
Well, and the other question is how many chances in your life are you going to have to coach at Alabama?
Right.
And that is something that would be difficult to turn down. Now the buyouts for these guys, and you touched on this, Lanning is $20 million, Kalen DeBoer is 12, Dabo is 7. Now I've seen James Franklin in this list. They're not going to hire James Franklin.
That's the dumbest damn thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. Look, when people make this list, they've got to throw some folks in there just to see what sticks against the wall. I can tell you Alabama's not going to hire James Franklin. James Franklin, frankly, can't win over 9 or 10 games in a year, so that certainly is not going to happen. Mike Norvell's name's been mentioned. His buyout's $4 million. I just don't think that's going to happen. He's doing a really good job at Florida State at this point too. Lanning was rumored to be in Tuscaloosa last night. That was not true. He wasn't there. Now, the Greg Byrne is AD at Alabama, and this is going to happen quickly because that's just the way Byrne does things. In the major hires that he's made, including Nate Oates, the basketball coach, when there was a vacancy, basically within 2 or 3 days, he had a hire. And frankly, with the recruiting class, Bama's got enough talent coming back, and you already see this in the way early preseason top 25. They're going to be ranked 1, 2, or 3 in the preseason magazines next year. That's how many and how much talent they've got that's coming back. But the point here is Byrne's going to make a hire fairly quickly to keep as many of those folks in the fold as possible.
Yeah. The crazy thing about this whole deal is we sit here and we talk about the Alabama ties. They usually try to hire somebody who's been there before. Don't you? I mean, I think I read somewhere, but I know Nick Saban, he dots his I's and crosses his T's better than anybody.
Yeah.
But doesn't you think he's going to have a say in who takes over here?
Yes, I can tell you that. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Dan.
Yes.
I think his number one choice is Dan Lanning.
Now, I will say this: they are past the point now of just having to have an Alabama guy. You heard this when Michigan won the national championship, that Harbaugh is a Michigan guy. Look, I get that. I respect that for all these schools and when they make their decisions. But that is no longer the case in Alabama. That they are willing to go outside the family, shall we say, and to make a hire. Now, Lanning, as you mentioned, was on the Alabama staff. Now, it's funny that Saban made the comment a few weeks ago. He was asked about Dan Lanning, and he said, well, I was on the verge of hiring Dan Lanning. I waited, and Kirby hired him 2 days later. So, I mean, Lanning knows the SEC. He's been around, and he gets that at this point. And here's the other thing going on. That there are really only so many guys right now who are available. I mean, when you think about a coaching search, you think about, well, that must be full, 35 to 40 guys you can hire. That's not the case. It really isn't. I mean, look, Alabama's not hiring Harbaugh. They're not hiring Ryan Day. They're not hiring James Franklin. They're not hiring Mac Norvell. They're not hiring Riley at USC. And frankly, because some of these guys they don't fit the program. Riley doesn't understand defense yet, so I'm not sure who's going to hire him after he leaves USC. But frankly, Shane, when you look at this, you really only got probably, I mean, realistically, 5 to 8 candidates that who are out there. I know Saban does commercials with Deion Sanders. They're not going to hire Deion Sanders either.
No.
Frankly. But I will tell you, Guy, that he's not ready because of the situation. But down the line, keep your eye on D'Amico Ryans at Houston. He's a former Bama player, and I can tell you his name's been brought up with this. I'm not saying they're going to hire him. I'm just saying, and Shane, does that make some sense? He's done a tremendous job at Houston, hasn't he?
He has, and I was texting with some guys, and I put on my list, it was Lanning, Lane, Dabo, Sark, and D'Amico Ryans were going to be the guys. The rumor that Dan Lanning was in town is not correct, but he will be probably their first choice. Tighten our text line from Brent and Jack says, congratulations to Coach Saban. This will create a major domino effect, not only in coaching, but also in the portal. I think so too. And then Ted wants to know on Facebook Live, any chance Urban Meyer gets hired?
No. Urban needs to stay at coaching. He just does. Urban is a brilliant coach. He's an elite recruiter, but he's doing what he needs to be doing right now, frankly.
Yeah.
So no, Urban's not getting the job.
No. We'll continue talking about this, Brent. Let's move on to the national championship game. Michigan is your national champion. Pretty much took over the game, physically dominated the Washington Huskies. Were you surprised at all?
No, not really. I mean, listen. The stat that I want you to think about this a minute, Shane. Michigan. This is on the season, okay? Michigan had five offensive turnovers the whole year and 45 penalties on the whole season.
I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
Now, that is not beating yourself, right?
Yeah, that's pretty good stuff right there.
Yeah. So, but they did an incredible job. Now, you and I have watched this game for years. You played on all levels. But I don't remember anybody ever being that efficient and not having turnovers. But look, something you said will never go out of style. If you've got if you've got a really elite defensive line, you're going to have an incredible team, and that's why people hire elite defensive line coaches, which leads me into this note, and I'll be glad to get back to Michigan in a sec, but LSU yesterday hired Bo Davis from Texas. Bo Davis is the best defensive line coach in the country. So
I feel like Bo Davis he's been coaching a long time.
Yes.
But it feels like every 2 years he either goes to Texas, to LSU, or Alabama, and he just rotates.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. And I can tell you Alabama was interested in him too. I mean, he has a lot of ties with LSU, but he's an incredible coach. I mean, the job he did with Texas defensive line with Sweat and those guys is amazing. But back to your question, I mean, look, and Gene Stallings, when he was in Alabama, always said this, and it's an old mantra, but it's true. If you can run the ball and stop the run, you're going to win most games. And that's what Michigan did in the national championship game.
Yeah, for sure. Clint on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plum, has a question. I don't know if you know the answer, Brent. He says, Brent, does the portal reopening for Alabama apply to the recruits that recently signed their letter of intent?
I would have to double check that. I know it involves the roster. Now, okay, let me apply let's look at it like this. The majority of this recent recruiting class is enrolled in school and they're midterm enrollees. So if you're in school, yes. So I'm going to say those guys, particularly who are in school, that would be open for them because they're students. So, and that's where we're getting now is a lot of these recruiting classes. I mean, Shane, half of them have already enrolled, and we see how that's changed over the. That's a great question. So that's my answer to that. And again, a lot of the stuff comes down: are you enrolled in school? And if you are, that changes things. If you're not, that's another situation.
Radware is a family-owned business that prides itself in excellent customer service while providing quality and affordable promotional products and customized apparel. Speaking with Brent Beaird on the Titan More Hotline, courtesy of Duffield Home Improvements. On the Titan More text line, Josh says, QB, have you ever met Saban? If so, what was he like to you? And what did he do for the SEC college football, in your opinion? Well, he's been phenomenal. Yes, I do. I don't know him well. I played for him. I was his last year in Miami was my last year in the NFL. So he was all business all the time. But he was kind of a player's coach. Boy, he used to get on his coaches, though.
Yeah.
He didn't really yell at the players. He yelled at them damn assistant coaches like nobody I've ever seen.
Look, he was brutal on the coaches. I mean, he had them. The demands on the coaches were incredible. He's an interesting human being. He has this ability to recruit and communicate with players unlike anybody I've ever seen. But frankly, if you meet him, he's almost shy. That's hard to believe, but he is. He's not real comfortable, and you're not going to do a lot of small talk with him. Frankly, you're right. He's very efficient in his speech. He'll get to the point, and then he'll move on with that too. But yes, his ability to recruit and communicate with 18 to 22-year-olds is in the elite status.
Yeah. On the Titan More text line, George says, Brent, what did you think about Auburn rolling Toomer's corner?
Well, that's a typical reaction from Auburn, but particularly with the coach that dominated Auburn on the field the way that he did. I mean, look, Georgia Georgia fans we're happy to see it too. But that's what happens, and that's great in a way. That's reverse respect for Saban, and again, look, the thing he did that was really important. He left that job and with the facilities and so forth in much better shape than when he got there, and that was one of his goals, was to be able to do that. By the way, Chris Lowe had an interesting quote from Saban. He said, 14-hour days are a lot harder at 72 than they were at 62 when you want to be sure you're on top of everything, which is more difficult than ever. The greatest thing that he may have done was to unite the Alabama fan base and to in that everything went through him. And what I mean by that is Alabama football was an absolute mess before he got there, because you had wealthy alumni who thought they ran the program. Well, when he came there, and this is a lesson for every coach, including Billy Napier, is one of the greatest things you can do is to let people know that you're in charge, you're running the program. We're not having a faction here and a faction there, and I'm not saying Florida's doing that. I'm just saying that that's truly one of the greatest things he did was to get the Alabama nation together as well as he did, and he ran the show, and there were no questions about that at all.
We got a bunch of people on YouTube talking about Bama needs to hire Billy Napier. They're kind of joking around, but I can tell you this, because I know a lot of big money Alabama people and actually some administrators there. They love Billy Napier at Alabama.
Oh yeah, they do. I agree with that. Yes. Yes. There's no question about that, and they think Napier has a real future. So,
yeah.
And look, I'm not saying they're going to hire him. I'm with you that he is well thought of at Alabama.
Yeah. All right, Brent, real quick before we get you out of here, Auburn, pretty much the news coming out of there is Hugh Freeze is going back to calling plays.
Yeah. He fired Philip Montgomery, and so he has decided he's going back. He made Freeze, frankly, threw his offensive staff under the bus after the bowl game. Said, well, hey, I've been out recruiting, but I didn't like the game plan. Well, Hugh is the head coach. He makes the game plan, so that's more on him than anything else. But Keontae Scott at Auburn, defensive back, has taken his name out of the portal. Kadade Salter, the Liberty quarterback, is not going to Auburn. By the way, 2024, this coming season, will be the 7th straight year that Auburn has a different offensive coordinator. So that's kind of interesting to look at. But yeah, that's a lot of what's going on at Auburn at this point.
Yeah. Gators signed Ron Roberts. You know much about him? He was at Auburn. He's been around the block a little bit.
He's a veteran, knows his way around the league. He has ties to Austin Armstrong, the coordinator. I mean, they thought well of him at Auburn, too, so I think that's a pretty good pickup. Also, I thought Malik Benson may be going to Florida, but he ended up at Florida State. That's the Alabama wide receiver. Jack Miller obviously is no longer there. I thought they had a nice week. Some people may disagree, but I thought the Tulane DB, DJ Douglas, was a good commitment. Also, I mean, they've got the Liberty wide receiver, C.J. Daniels, I understand, supposed to visit. I know Richie Leonard is leaving. DJ Lagway being honored was a good situation. I tell you who I loved that they got was this Grayson Pup Howard, the linebacker out of South Carolina, and then they get the Arkansas transfer. 6'9", 310 is just amazing, isn't it, Shane?
Yep, that's huge man. Were you surprised? And I don't know if people saw this, but Logan Diggs, who was a tailback at Notre Dame, transferred to play for Chip Kelly, for Brian Kelly last year at LSU, went into the portal and signed with Ole Miss.
Yeah. Ole Miss is making a real attempt. Ole Miss is going to be rated in the preseason magazines, not only in the top 10, they may be in the top 5, frankly. Now, obviously, Kiffin's name is going to be up, or is going to come out a little bit for the Alabama job. I'm not, and I can tell you, if he's offered the job, he would walk to Tuscaloosa for that job. I can absolutely tell you that. But does that mean that they're going to hire him? I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying that he very much would love to have the job. But again, I will say this: he has done as good a job as anybody with recruiting in the portal to get ready for next season.
Yeah, but I think that, and I don't know this for a fact, but for a kid who followed his coach from Notre Dame to LSU and then leave after playing at LSU, I believe Ole Miss is giving him more money than LSU.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. That's why a lot of these guys are leaving with that. By the way, Noah Cain entered the NFL. The Penn State transfer at LSU. To me, the biggest thing and I give Brian Kelly a lot of credit for this. Their defense last year, you and I talked about this. I mean, it was abysmal. They had injuries, had guys who didn't step up, but they've gone out and got Blake Baker out of Missouri, who is a really good defensive coordinator. And as we mentioned, they also picked up Bo Davis, who's the best defensive line coach anywhere. So if you've got a real weakness, and they did in defense, Kelly has taken steps to make that better.
Yeah. Text on the Titan Amara text line from Fred. He says, wasn't the coaching staff in Miami when you were there, didn't it include Kirby? And, it was Kirby Smart was there, Muschamp was there, Saban was there. So, they were all there my last year in the NFL.
Yes.
Joseph says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon Law, why isn't Florida being as aggressive as Ole Miss? Half of these guys Florida's signing I have never heard of. We're not throwing the money around. We don't have the money like Ole Miss, Joseph. That's the facts.
Well, let me also say this, too, is just because that you got a player from Tulane interested in you doesn't mean the guy's not a good player.
Oh, yeah. You're exactly right.
And people need to understand that. You've got a lot of guys, Tulane, South Alabama, Southern Miss, who there's some really good players on these teams. The team itself didn't do real well, but there's some outstanding players that they are looking at. So people need to understand that too. Just because it's a smaller school doesn't mean these guys can't play.
Yeah. Has Quinshon Junkins officially signed with Ohio State, or where do you think he ends up, Brent?
Yeah, no. My understanding is he's at Ohio State. So that was, and there were a lot of disparaging things that came out about him. I talked to a friend who works with Ole Miss on the broadcast, and he told me that he never really heard any problems with Junkins. But that's a loss. There's no doubt about that. So that they unfortunately won't have him. Scooby Williams, by the way, ended up at A&M. Monkel Goodwin, who was at Alabama, went to South Carolina in Ole Miss. They got a transfer from North Carolina. But Shane's right. I mean, they do. Ole Miss has a lot of money. They're well organized with their NIL. And unfortunately, Shane and I have to talk about this every week. That's a part of what we're dealing with now on a daily basis.
Yeah, and Nora just put on Facebook in huge quotes, capitalized my statement, we don't have the money of Ole Miss. He asked, am I serious? I'm just telling you, Brent, I mean, am I right here or wrong?
Yes, yes, you're right. Look, people would be really surprised how many schools that have a really good NIL that really haven't done anything on the field for years. Now, people have said, and this is a sermon on another day, that the transfer portal and the NIL would revolutionize some of these football teams, and that truly is what's going on. Because yes, you're seeing some teams we never dreamed would do anything in the top 25 who may actually have a really good team because of their NIL.
So, yeah, because if you go back when Hugh Freeze was Ole Miss, they had probably some of the best wide receivers in all of America. Most of them are playing in
Yes,
the NFL now. And how did they
correct.
get them? They were doing NIL illegally in those days.
Yep,
So
they
they
were.
they have the money. They have the money.
Yes.
Give us some nuggets before you get out of here, Brent.
Yeah, let me throw some Florida State stuff here real quick. We mentioned Malik Benson from Alabama is going to Florida State. Mike Norvell won the 2023 Bear Bryant Award, so congratulations to him. Earl Little from Alabama is also committed to Florida State. Some of that is because Pat Surtain, his former high school coach, is at Florida State. Todd Rodemaker is at Southern Miss. With that, Miami has given Lance Guidry a raise because his name was mentioned a few times. Talia, Tua's brother, who played at Maryland, is trying to get to Miami. And it's not a money issue. The issue is he's out of eligibility. He played, when he was in Alabama, he played 5 games instead of just 4. Remember, if you're a freshman, you can play 4. And so they're trying to get an NCAA waiver for him to have a 6th year of eligibility. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. By the way, and Miami also got a quarterback from Albany, Reese Poffenbarger is his name. Probably a lot of folks haven't heard of him, but he threw for 36 touchdowns and 3,600 yards. Also, I've seen a little bit where Mac Brown and North Carolina are looking at Jeff Collins as maybe their D coordinator. Gene Chizik is no longer there. They had a mutual parting of the ways, so he is gone too. So, and there are, there's still a lot of stuff that's going on in college football, but the retirement of Nick Saban is frankly overshadowed everything.
No doubt about it. Brent, appreciate your time. We'll talk to you next week, buddy.
Good. Always enjoy it, bud. Take care.
Yeah, that's Brent Beaird, a college football analyst. Join us on the Titanmore Hotline. Take a quick time out. Come back. We'll be joined by Kevin Brockway, talk a little Gator hoops. Got blasted last night. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the morning. We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Campus USA, put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, watch. Duffield Home Improvements for your window, siding, and roofing needs. Radware, your local provider of promotional products, uniforms, and apparel. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Silverback Concrete, Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Radware, F45, Quality Plumbing. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar, If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Pro football legend Emmitt Smith understands your joint pain.
It does not surprise me that there are a ton of people out there that's in pain.
That's why Emmitt is such a proponent of QC Kinetics, offering real lasting joint pain relief with non-surgical, all-natural biologic treatments.
Whether it's a joint pain, ankle pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, back pain, hip pain, any kind of pain, the body eventually will break down when it's under that much stress.
That stress can cloud your judgment to the point that you'll just say yes to the scalpel or yes to another prescription of pain pills. But maybe it's time for a second opinion from QC Kinetics.
The reason why I would recommend this is because the natural biologics that QC Kinetics is providing you gives your body a chance to naturally heal itself.
Restorative, regenerative solutions are here. Get lasting relief and live your life.
Call QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550. That's 352-400-4550. QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Silverback Concrete's a family-led team of heavy concrete specialists that build commercial structures with unrivaled quality. Silverback Concrete, you stand on it, we stand by it. Let's head to the Titan and Moore Hotline, courtesy of Duffield Home Improvements, and welcome Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Good morning, Kevin. How you doing, bud?
Good morning, Shane. How are you?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Last night was not good up in Oxford. Obviously, Chris Beaird, Ole Miss, they're a pretty good basketball team. But it goes to show you, if you look around college basketball, it's hard to win games on the road. It just blows my mind how hard it is. It doesn't seem like it should be, but you see all these top-ranked teams getting upset when they go on the road. What was the biggest issue for the Gators last night, in your opinion?
Well, I think defense and taking care of the basketball were the two main things. You know, you allow a team to shoot 75% from the second half. I mean, that's just matador defense. And I think what happened was Ole Miss got out on transition. The turnovers affected that, and they got a lot of open looks in transition. Knocked down a lot of three-pointers. They were 8 of 20 from three, and it just kind of snowballed. Even in the first half, you know, you're down 44-40. You're pretty much trading baskets. I mean, Walter Clayton and Zion Pullen really kind of kept them in the game. Both had very good offensive first halves, but in the second half, it just kind of unraveled on them. And I just wonder, Shane, the makeup of this team defensively, and you know, the fact that Riley Kugel also only played 4 minutes, and he might be your best perimeter defender. You know, where the answers are going to come from, particularly defending the perimeter.
Yeah, Kevin, we got a question here for you on Facebook Live. Kevin, it took Todd Gullen less than 4 minutes to determine Kugel just didn't have it last night. Do you think Todd will alter his rotation now?
Well, I think, you know, you're 0-2 in the SEC. You have to explore changes, right? You have to take a look at, you know, and he's been tinkering with starting lineups all season, and he liked, you know, what he had going into SEC play. And they've certainly proven offensively to be a good lineup. I mean, they've scored 85 both games. Now, I mean, Ole Miss, there was some points in garbage time, but I think that the issue is defensively is stopping people. You know, you got to consider some guys. I mean, Denzel Aberdeen is another athletic guy. Maybe you create a little bit more of a role for him as well. But they've got to figure out ways to defend better. And, you know, rebounding is part of that. And this is, you know, I still think a very good rebounding team, but they also haven't made the impact on the boards and the offensive boards maybe the way I thought. And some of that is they're facing better size. And I'll tell you what, that Ole Miss kid, that Jamison Sharp, 7'5", he had 9 block shots too. That was really something to watch. I mean, it was the best shot blocking effort I've seen in the game since a guy named Jarvis Bernardo back in the day at Ole Miss. You know, he was at Mississippi State, excuse me. He was quite the shot blocker back in the day. And Colin Castleton, you know, had some moments too, but Florida maybe could have attacked differently and tried to get him in more foul trouble. I think Todd, after the game, was a little upset at the fact that maybe more fouls weren't, you know, called. He got a technical late in the game when Tyrese Samuel went up for a dunk. He felt like he was hit by Sharp and there was no foul called. So that was a little frustration spilling over there. But Shane, as we said before, that's part of life on the road in the college basketball and why you see these teams dropping on the road. The the home team tends to get the benefit of the doubt on the whistles because they play more aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, I still love our backcourt. I just think Pullen and Walter Clayton Jr. I just like the way they play. They're not scared to take shots. Um, Now, whether how they defend and stuff, all that, I don't pay attention to it. But I just haven't seen a backcourt like this in a long time for the Gators.
It's a scoring backcourt, but you got to play both ends, Shane. I think that, like I just wonder, if you can outscore guys, if you have that firepower, that's fine. Walter, shot the ball pretty well last night. Will Richard is a guy who was really hot in December, who's cooled off too. That's been a big issue. They need a little more from him as well. But I do think that, the defense has to come into it in some component because they're getting beat off the dribble a lot and it's breaking down the entire defense.
Yeah. When you look around the league, obviously Tennessee lost. I turned on the TV when Mississippi State was up big. Tennessee started pressing them, and I felt like I was watching a 8-year-old youth team at the YMCA that had no idea how to inball the ball against the press. I've never seen that in my entire life in Division I basketball. When I tell you Mississippi State has no clue how to inbound against a press and break the press, I'm not joking. It was like 6 straight turnovers. Did you see any of that game?
I saw that. Yeah, no, and it was Tennessee really and that's how they got back in the game. And I kind of thought Tennessee was going to close that out, very similar to how Kentucky kind of stole a game at Florida. But you got to give Mississippi State credit in terms of Tolu Smith came up with a big 3-point play, and Tennessee I think still has some issues offensively. Dalton Connect is quite a player, and Ziegler could score a little bit, but I think on average they still don't execute as well and aren't as smooth offensively as say Kentucky, and that's going to hold them back. That's held them back under Rick Barnes in the tournament, just their offensive efficiency. If you look at their numbers every year, they're not quite good enough, particularly in those crunch time situations. So credit to Mississippi State, but I mean that was a good press by Tennessee. I mean Florida's had issues with the press too, and Ole Miss got them for turnover 2 in the second half. There they kind of sprinkled in some pressure, and I think that. But Mississippi State, that's something that if they come to the O-Dome, I think later this month, that's something that Todd Gold and their staff should definitely look at attacking because Mississippi State was bereft of ball handlers in that game for sure.
It was unbelievable. It was I was like they had like 4 straight, couldn't even inbound it, or they would throw it and then bam, layup. They'd turn it over, layup. I thought that Chris Jans would call a timeout. He never even called a timeout. It was bizarre. The Gators host, I believe, Arkansas Saturday in the O'Connell Center. Both teams are 0-2. It's a must-win game, especially being at home. Arkansas lost to Georgia. Mike White's team is 2-0 right now. Are you surprised at how poor Arkansas is playing?
Yeah, very, because I think Bill Musselman, I think Eric Musselman's a good coach. I called him Bill, that's his dad, who is a famous coach at Minnesota, but and I think with the Portland Trailblazers. But Eric Musselman has proven to be a good coach. He's got a track record. He's gotten teams to, I think the last 3 Arkansas teams to the Elite 8, 1 to the Sweet 16. They're an athletic team. I think they've had some issues with point guard play there and turning the ball over. So I think that's something that Florida is going to have to exploit on Saturday is really do that. And, they're kind of a high tempo track meet team. So this is another game that can get up and down the floor. It'll probably be entertaining to watch. But Florida's going to have to get some stops. I mean, they just have got to figure something out defensively. I thought in the first half of the Kentucky game, they played really well with their switching defense, but their last 3 quarters defensively just has not been good at all. And I think it's probably a combination of different factors. I think that, like Micah Hanlogden is a guy that, can give you a little bit of rim protection, but he's a little limited offensively. And then you have a guy like Alex Condon, who's a pretty good offensive player, but is limited defensively and is still learning as a freshman. So I think the lack of having those kind of complete 2-way players can show up in the SEC. And what you hope for is that they develop and improve on their deficiencies as the season progresses.
Yep, for sure. Greg says, let's see if Bama gets their hiring right. Shane says these legendary coaches aren't growing on trees. Well, the one coaches that I mentioned that I feel like are in contention are winning a lot. So, um, yeah, Hall of Fame coaches just don't fall out of the trees, but Alabama gets to pick whoever the hell they want. Text on the Titan MR text line, Kevin. Um, well, where did it go? Oh, here it is. It's from Bobby. He says, how many SEC games do you think the Gators need to win to make the tournament?
I'd say 9 to 10 probably, and it also depends on what the 9 to 10 are too. You're going to probably need because right now their best win is Pittsburgh, who lost to Duke the other day. So you're probably going to need a win against one of the heavyweights. Maybe Auburn, maybe Kentucky, maybe Tennessee, to get that kind of statement win. You got Alabama twice also, and I think Alabama is going to kind of be there in the end too. But if you can get to 9 and 10 SEC wins, but 9-1 in the tournament or 10 in the regular season, I think with 20 wins with their strength of schedule, that probably gets them in.
All right, switching gears real quick. I want to get your thoughts on Nick Saban retiring. In Kevin Brockway's mind, who do you think they go after? Who's their number one choice, and who do you think takes the job at Alabama?
Yeah, I think Dan Lanning has to be the guy, right? I just think that makes the most sense. I mean, he's got kind of that Southern ties, the SEC ties with Georgia. And I think Oregon is a job that we saw with Mario Cristobal that you would leave for, in terms of, giving it a shot. For a while, I thought Dabo would be the shoo-in choice, but I think his star has fallen a little bit lately. And I think that there's a strange animosity among the Alabama fans, even though he was obviously on that 1993 team and on national champion, and he's an alma mater that it's just maybe because Clemson beat him in the national championship a few times, he's just not very well liked there, which doesn't make sense to me. But what are you going to do? But I think Lanning is probably would be my number one choice if I were the athletic director.
If you're Dan Lanning, do you take the job?
Yeah, I do. I think so because, I mean, with the way the Big Ten is now, and Oregon's not going to get the revenue shares, the same revenue shares as a lot of the other. Alabama, you have all the resources, you have the whole state, everyone's behind you, to have success, and it's a plum job. I mean, let's face it. And I know, you talk about the pressure being the guy after the guy, and we see that in sports. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, when Jimbo Fisher followed Bobby Bowden, I mean, it worked a little bit, and then it kind of tailed off at the end, or he left on his own volition for Texas A&M. But Joby Hall, replacing Adolph Rupp, he won a national championship. It can work, but you have to be a strong-minded person. I mean, Mike White, after Billy Donovan, Mike had some decent years. He had the Elite Eight year 2 years later. But it's always interesting to see, how tough-minded you have to be to kind of be in that situation. But Lanning strikes me as a guy that would thrive in that situation and would obviously get the state behind him and would be, I think, a pretty popular choice among people within the state and within the athletic administration.
But coaching at Oregon in the Big Ten is so much easier getting to the playoffs now, in my opinion. Not that Alabama won't, but the pressure of coaching at Alabama. But I'm with you. I mean, Alabama's the premier job in all of America, so
yeah,
you take it if it's offered.
Get 18-team conference now, the Big Ten. It's going to be, and the SEC will be 16. I get it, and the SEC's
there's only 4 teams in the Big Ten that have a chance to win. Honestly, yeah. Let's be honest.
I mean, I think
Oregon, USC, Ohio State, and Michigan, maybe Penn State. So there's 5.
Yeah. I think with the West Coast teams, it's a little bit different, and Washington and what Kalen DeBoer has done there. It's we'll see what he does without Michael. But
I forgot about Washington. Yeah,
but it'll be interesting to see. But I agree. I just think that Alabama, though, you've got the resources there to be successful.
Oh yeah, there's no question. All right, last question. Joseph on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon Law, says, do you think the Kentucky game was affecting Florida's energy last night?
I just think playing on the road in general, there was some, obviously crappy weather on Tuesday. Who know what their flight situation was, going in there and so forth. And it could be a grind, but I don't know. I thought that, if anything, I thought that they would be encouraged going toe to toe with, one of the best teams in the SEC. And, they started out, they were up 17-14. Another thing too is the second unit kind of let them down in terms of not being able to score and produce, and that's when they started to fall behind in the first half. They were down about 10-12 in the first half and cut it to 4, but playing uphill on the road is a lot of pressure. So I thought they came out with good energy, but couldn't sustain it, and a lot of that had to do with the execution of the second unit. And I think Todd was counting on Riley to kind of carry that second unit. He didn't, and maybe that's why he pulled him after 4 minutes. Who knows? We'll find out more when we talk to him next on Friday.
Yeah. Before I let you go, NFL playoffs start this weekend. You see any upsets?
Do I see any upsets? Would you call the Tampa Bay Bucks over the Eagles an upset?
I would, because I think the Eagles are a favorite, but I think Tampa's going to win that game too.
Yeah, no, and I think the Eagles are in a tailspin, and a lot of issues on defense, and Baker Mayfield is playing pretty well. So if that's my upset, that's what I'll call.
All right, good stuff, Kevin. Let everybody know how they can follow you on Twitter and read your work and all that good stuff.
Yeah, Gatorsports.com, Gainesville.com, and at Kevin Brockway G1, and gotta hit the Ricola here because I don't know what happened this week, but I got hit with something, so hopefully I can get back on the mend here.
All right, well, get well, my man. Appreciate you joining the program.
All right, thank you.
That's Kevin Brockway, joins on the Titan Oral Hotline, courtesy of Duffield Home Improvements. This day in sports brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life. Campus USA Credit Union. This day, let me pull it up. In 1967, and San Diego was granted an NBA franchise to be called the Rockets. The franchise moved to Houston for the 1971 season. So they didn't have them very long. That is This Day in Sports, brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Tomorrow's program, we'll have JC. He is fine, people. Appreciate y'all asking about him. He's fine. He knew it was going to come eventually, didn't know when, but JC will be on. We'll also have, I think, Graham Hall on, talk to you about the recruiting weekend for the Gators. So I hope you enjoyed today's program. Ruse Ogre State Farm offers a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visitogreinsurance.com. Give them a call at 352-240-1779. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow, folks. Take care.